Once in a while. You had to do that. All right. Good. There we go. It was me. It's operator errors. 90% of everything is, or in my case, 100% is operator error. All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Exit Your Way Business Roundtable, Thursday morning, 7:30 a.m. Pacific. A lot later for you people in the Central and East Coast, but thanks for coming today. We're going to be talking today about generating content that gets through the noise. With us today on our panel, we've got Adam Lewis. Each one of these people are going to tell a little bit more about themselves. I'm going to gloss over it, and you guys can start. But Adam started out of college being a sports journalist for a number of years for several Seattle sports teams. Now he's at PitchBook doing financial reporting, and I'll let him explain that much better.
That's a good start. That's a good start.
Yeah, but we'll get through everyone and give them back around again. Elizabeth Crouch. Elizabeth is currently at Ookla. She's responsible for enterprise marketing. And if you don't know who Ookla is, that is the company that does speed tests. If you've ever been frustrated with your internet speed and you're at home and you go, that's them. She's been at companies like UserMind, PitchBook, Moz. Now she's at Ookla. Jennifer Wegman, well known to many of us. Jennifer started out doing research for legal companies. Then she did mid-market M&A research and analysis. And most recently, she was the social media content manager and content generation person for Service Casper Corporation. She's also the host of USA Manufacturing Twitter Hour. So we got a great panel with us today. Also, as you know, Andrew Cross is here. Johnny Kingman is here from Exit Your Way. So Adam, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I'll just start from the beginning, I guess. I come from a family that owns community newspapers up in the northwest part of Washington, so have always had journalism in my blood. Went to Washington State University, studied communications with an emphasis in journalism. Got out of school in 2013, and I really wanted to be a sports writer. I loved baseball, played it growing up, so I covered the Seattle Mariners for 2 or 3 years. And that really aged me, I guess, after, given that they haven't made the playoffs in 20 years, 2 or 3 years felt like, 10. And in 2016, I got recruited by PitchBook for, a little bit better opportunity from a financial standpoint to cover the private markets for their newsletter and the PitchBook newsletter, which goes out to a couple 100,000 people 5 days a week, as well as their website. So I cover the private equity industry, specifically any intersection between like private equity and sports, private equity and media, and all that. So yeah, it's cool. Every day is a challenge.
Cool. So Elizabeth, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so currently, as Damon mentioned, I'm at Ookla, makers of the popular speed test app, as well as Down Detector. And I lead enterprise marketing there. So that's everything from content creation and distribution to sales enablement, working across all different channels like social media, blog, white papers, webinars. So prior to that, I've got about a decade of experience, mostly selling and marketing technology at companies like UserMind, PitchBook, Moz, and Appen. In addition, I have freelanced a lot over my career working with small to medium businesses. So consulting on content marketing, brand and voice creation, email marketing, all this sort of different ways that you can use content to support the buyer's journey at every stage.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. And Jennifer.
Long and windy road. So prior to working for myself doing consulting in business development, I worked for M&A investment bank where I have occasionally used PitchBook. So I've been a user of and have probably read Adam's writing at some point. And then I was doing sell-side M&A industry research, which is a good kind of background to have to generate content, be able to generate content from all areas and aspects of business, because I worked in commercial services and industrial. So pretty much anything not banking or insurance, I helped out with. Okay. And then I left my job to stay home with my son and started my own consulting business. And that's how building that business on Facebook, because they don't like toddlers at networking events for some reason, especially in-person ones. I had to learn how to generate content that actually got me clients and sales. And then I was eventually recruited to build Service Caster's social media from the ground up. But unfortunately, COVID hit and, things happen. Yeah. So I am back to doing consulting.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Continue. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm back to doing consulting. I'm in the process of getting everything reset up again, which is I've decided to take July off and focus on my family and kind of do these things, and then hit it hard in August when I come back from vacation next week.
Great. Well, Andrew, anything? Johnny, anything?
Yeah, just for everybody to kind of understand where we came together on this, because, we've been actively, we try to produce content. We try to get our message out into with our new team members, with Ira and Johnny, and working on getting that message out, and how hard it is to get, heard through the noise. And there's so much crap on there. But then how this came together was, these people are killing it. I mean, they are putting out content there, has an amazing reach, is highly interesting. And just thought we'd get a chance here to pick their brains and see how they're doing. Get behind the curtain there, because I haven't figured it out yet. So that's great. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, good. I want to thank Johnny too, because Johnny is the one who knew Adam and Elizabeth and got her here. And thanks, Jennifer. Jennifer's been a multi-time participant here and great contributor to it. So let's jump right into it. And I'm just going to let you guys kind of answer the questions or comment on things. You guys in your roles, you've been in roles where you got to generate content consistently. Mm-hmm. So is there a process that you go through that's like, hey, I have to do it like this to get that out every so many days or something like that? Or how do you do that? How do you come up, from the idea generation all the way through to making sure that we have the content ready to go? Anyone jump in?
I guess I can speak for myself is I had a lot of good business coaches back when I was doing my consulting. And the one kind of thing that I learned that I was doing before was a content library. So you think about, what are your foundational topics? And then you create content around them, put it in a library so that you always have evergreen content you can fall back on. And so when I do content strategy, like even for a product or for a service, we had, like for the products, I had different series of casters, different types of casters, and I would build content around each of those series that I could use, if I needed to recycle, because casters are casters. They kind of don't really change, just how you use them may. And so I create categories kind of in that same vein and just continue to build content around them. That's what I do.
So Adam, in your work there at PitchBook, are you able to use evergreen content, or is your stuff always new that you have to generate?
I'd say probably 95% is new. Like I'm pretty much victim to the news cycle most days of the week. But occasionally, if we can, produce some evergreen content
on the West Coast.
Oh, was there?
No, I don't think so.
Jennifer, I'm bringing you back up. I hope the people are back again. Jennifer, there we go. There we go. So for those of us that got kicked off here for some reason, So Adam, come back again. So you said about 95% of your stuff is you're stuck with the news cycle.
Yeah, you're stuck with the news cycle. But I mean, occasionally, if you see like really broad themes within your industry, there are opportunities, I think, to create evergreen content. Like one good example that PitchBook did, one of my coworkers did a story a few weeks ago on special purpose acquisition companies.
Yep.
Which have grown greatly in significance here over the past, couple of months. And we all put together just like a video explainer of like, what is a special purpose acquisition company? Why are, investors creating them and then taking them public and what, just like kind of what's behind that. So anytime that we write, Bill Ackman, who's a hedge fund guy, a billionaire, I think he took one public yesterday for $4 billion. So when we have that news, then we can, link back to that evergreen type of content. Like, here's what a SPAC is. Here's why it's important. Here's why you should care, basically. So, we do take the opportunity when we can, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool. And you guys have had a transition because you said you used to be more article writer, and explain that a little bit. And then you had a new change in direction, and now you guys are more like financial reporters.
Yes. Yeah. So when I joined in 2016, basically our main job function was mine was always to cover, the private equity industry, but we really put an emphasis on, it was almost a borderline marketing role where like every story I wrote, I would make sure I'd link to, some of PitchBook's private market data with like a search, so to maybe generate a few leads.
It was from a sales standpoint. We at the sales team always viewed the newsletter as a lead generation thing. It was kind of
the number of annoying emails.
You don't have access to the full platform. Set up a demo.
Yeah. The number of annoying emails I would get from salespeople like Johnny early on. Just like, hey, can you get this in the newsletter? And it's like, a $20,000 deal in like the middle of North Dakota.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know if anyone really cares about this, but if they're going to be a client, I guess.
Well, it's really. It's an interesting because if you think about PitchBook and the way that, for those of you who don't know, PitchBook went from a startup in Seattle to they got bought by Morningstar and got hundreds and hundreds of employees now. I mean, how many employees do they have now, Adam?
We were just talking about this. I think it's over 500 for sure, and where it's all over the world. So
when you were starting out and you think of the maturation of the company, I'm sure in the beginning it was we got to sell as a data company needs to grow, and then once you get the breadth, and then with the Morningstar acquisition and given that horsepower behind you could change focus a little bit.
I certainly wasn't putting my foot down when I would get requests, to include this or that, because we were a small company, we were still growing, and whatever journalistic principle I had maybe at the time wouldn't outweigh the fact that we needed more clients.
Yeah. So in that respect, do you think that you've really gone from, we're in a fast growing company, now we can develop the brand and our knowledge base and really be in that source of information?
Yeah, that's kind of our goal. About a year ago, we brought in a former editor for the Wall Street Journal who's kind of taken over the news team and has made it his mission to, make us more of a news-focused operation in the vein of Bloomberg or Fortune magazine, or Axios is another resource that a lot of people use. But that's kind of been it's been an interesting transition, certainly, because most people didn't have the journalistic background on our news team. But
one of the things, for everybody on being in, sell side and M&A, one of the big things is, 51% of our GDP is lower middle market private companies. And one of the things we deal with all the time, this is amazing what PitchBook's doing, is because there's no information available to buyers. Like if you're buying a house, you have all the information you need to understand value, to understand how to capitalize it. Agency reps, the attorneys, the law very much protects the consumer. But when you go to sell a company or buy a company, everything's private.
Yeah.
Nothing there. There's no information. If you want to buy stock in a publicly traded company, you have everything at your disposal. And that knowledge, that that data is power, when we're doing that kind of stuff. But it's really hard to navigate around in there. So, I think PitchBook coming in at that time and the amount of information they get, that it's I think it's great for our economy.
Absolutely.
I will tell John Gabbard that. He said that.
Yeah.
You'll appreciate it.
So Elizabeth, now you were at PitchBook earlier. I'd like to get your data on there. Now we don't need to spend all the time on PitchBook. I just think it's interesting from a standpoint of, it was, small company gotten fairly large. And then explain a little bit about Ookla and the difference when you're trying to go towards large enterprises when you do that.
Yeah, I would say that, as far as the types of deals that we were trying to get, it's not too different when you think about the content that you need to support a sales deal, like an enterprise deal. And, while things like newsletters and blog posts are really good at netting in a wide audience, then you have to kind of think, well, once somebody is interested, what can we create for them to enter into a serious consideration or evaluation of our product or our service? So then you create more evergreen content. So things like case studies that show who else you've done work for, things like white papers if people need technical information about your products and services. So that's really a lot of what I'm doing at Ookla. We have a pretty popular blog. It generates a lot of press coverage. Ookla is widely accepted as the standard for network performance management. So every week we get coverage in top tier press around our data and analysis, which is a great way to drive top of funnel awareness. And then I work on the content that drives that middle of the funnel to bottom of the funnel, the actual closing of revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then when you were working on the, that's interesting because it's a lot different, like you said, when you're at the top of the funnel, and Jennifer, weigh in on this as well, because when you're at the top of the funnel, you're probably using a blog or something like that just to get it. But when you get into the funnel, what are you really focusing on then when you're trying to move down the funnel?
So similar to what Elizabeth said, I mean, case studies, testimonials, if you're like a coach or something, is, hey, look how my client had this transformation. If you're a caster, it's, hey, look where you can put our casters. You can put them on this thing. Or we sent out 500,000 casters to the hospital so they can build field beds for COVID. It's kind of the same. It's similar in that respect, is that you have to find creative ways to kind of hook those people in. A big thing for if you're marketing on Facebook, you want to be in Facebook, then you have to have original content for each Facebook group that you're going to market in. And so it's all leading to building a relationship of like, know, and trust, which really is what it comes down to ultimately.
So I didn't even realize we were going to talk about this, but it's interesting to me though, is because at the blog level, you're really just you're talking about, maybe in Adam could be, you're just talking about the general things that private equity is doing right now. But then as you move into the funnel, you could be talking about specific deals that are happening by a specific group or something like that really moves you down. Or as you're saying, an application of a product and testimonials from other users or something like that, as you were alluding to, is part of the work that you're doing at Ookla. So that's really interesting how your content has to change as you go in, get into the funnel farther.
We have a question here from Andrew Joyce. He was saying he wanted us to discuss the difference of creating content for the sake of content versus putting out content that is from a strategic basis that has an intended outcome.
So someone could talk about that.
I can speak a little bit to that. So I think there's a generally accepted broader opinion across industries that you need to be publishing content on a super regular basis. You always need to have fresh content. You need to publish X amount of content per day. It needs to be 800 words. It needs to be X, Y, and Z. And I think ultimately what's really important, especially, you know, for smaller companies that maybe don't have a dedicated writer, that don't have editors, that don't have the sort of content generation machine or quality checks in place, really, you have to be strategic with your resourcing and make sure that even if you are publishing a blog, you're, you know, making sure that you're optimizing for the search terms that you want to rank for in the search engines, and that SEO is a real priority for the content that you're generating. And, you know, it's great to have an editorial slant, but it's hard. It's hard. I mean, look at PitchBook. It took them years to develop like the readership. It's hard to generate a large following just by writing, you know, good blog posts. You really have to make sure that you're investing time and energy into things that can convert, and also often putting a little bit of money into promoting the content as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we talked about in the prep for the show, Elizabeth. You talked about promotion of your content. And so what are some of the areas that you're doing at more at an enterprise level, and explain that a little bit, and explain kind of what you're talking about there, because that's was really interesting, is that paid promotion for your content is important as you move up the ladder.
Yeah, I would say, you know, look at the publications that your audience already subscribes to. So, you know, if you're in manufacturing, maybe there's a newsletter that most of your clients, you know, are subscribed to stay on top of things. Most publications have sponsored content opportunities. So if you want to create a more in-depth, you know, presentation or white paper, leveraging their network and putting a little bit of money behind it can be a really good lead gen strategy.
Yeah. Well, we've got Ira on the stage here. Ira, you've got some questions?
Yeah. So to tie this all together, this is something that I think about all the time, right? When I'm writing, I'm trying to obviously promote sometimes myself, sometimes my clients, sometimes just something I see value in that's, you know, not really has anything to do with me, but something I do want to promote. So my question for you guys at PitchBook, when you're writing, how much of that do you keep in mind? Like, I have an audience. I have 170,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I have other sources where I have other followings that are smaller. But, you know, I have businesses that I represent. Exit Your Way, obviously. Home and Digital Media. I have my clients. I have job seekers by the tens of thousands that follow me. When you're writing a piece, when I'm writing a blog, or I'm writing an article, or I'm writing a post, I know what I do, but I'm just curious from your perspective, do you consider the audience at all? Are you only considering the audience? Are you aiming to appease your audience? Because, for example, I'm a conservative. So, you know, when I'm reading some things, I could tell that the person writing it is completely pandering to the left. And sometimes they're completely pandering to the right, and you get it. I mean, it's pretty easy to see. So when you write, are you considering any of that? How do you consider it, and how does that factor into? I mean, obviously you're editing the piece after you write it too. So there's
sure.
There's a free flow, and then there's okay, now I got my editor hat on, and
yeah, we have a pretty heavy editorial team. If you know something like skews one way or the other, I'm not going to say that I totally don't think about the audience at all, but my main job, or the thing that I just try to follow, it's going to sound boring and maybe preachy, but just like kind of basic journalistic principles of, you know, here's what happened, here's why it happened, here's why it's important. You know, of course, as a writer, as a human being, you're going to have, you know, your own beliefs, right? Whether you're conservative or liberal or whatever. But, you know, I know my audience is, you know, probably mostly tilting conservative because they're private equity. But yeah, I just try to be as objective as possible when I'm looking at things. certainly like, especially in the private equity industry, so there's so many hot button issues where people will already have, an opinion on whether, private equity backed companies should get loans or not from the PPP program. It's a story I'm working on right now. Like very, very divisive. Should the Small Business Administration be giving loans to, TGI Fridays, which has 200,000 employees across the country? So I just you try to get both sides and just present it or I do at least present it as objectively as possible. That's our job. So I know not every publication's like that, but that's, especially since we brought in a guy from the Wall Street Journal to run operations. I try not to get too preachy.
So Jennifer, Elizabeth, what do you guys do on that? Are you focused on your audience, or are you focused more on the subject and the things that?
And can I ask for one more thing in the answer? When you're giving that answer, you're talking about now for your publication. Mm-hmm. Is that the same when you go to social media? Because obviously there are different writing styles. You have a different audience on your social media, probably.
I try to. I'm not a huge proponent of like espousing personal views. If you're a journalist, I think it can undermine your credibility. Like if you, regardless of like whether you hate Donald Trump or not, if you're covering, financial stuff that is that he impacts one way or the other, and then, your Twitter last 5 tweets are F Donald Trump, then I think that as a journalist, obviously that's a public forum, and
you just undermine your credibility. Yeah, totally get it.
Yeah, no, I think it does, and I think a lot of writers don't feel that way because a lot of times there's pressure to build your personal brand and appease an audience online, and so you put it whatever you want out there, but. I don't know. I don't think my personal thoughts are that compelling. Where I need to write everything
about politics in social media, but as a journalist, you have to.
Yeah, for sure.
Have to cover Trump, his economic policy. I don't care if you like his hair, or, hate his personality and all the other stuff, but it's undeniable and it's unavoidable if you're a journalist. If you're not covering Trump and the economic impact that he has as president, then you're not doing the job.
For sure.
Especially in a financial publication.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. So Elizabeth and Jennifer, what do you guys think about this? When you're writing back to that, that's really important too. Ira is your personal side of this, because when you're working for your clients or your businesses, what do you guys think about that?
I think I have a little bit of a luxury at Ookla in that we're writing to a global audience, and most of our content is very data backed. So it's, by nature, it's very numbers driven and statistics driven, and network performance data is pretty, you can't get more objective than an actual measurement of something. But we have to, when writing content for other countries, have to take, local conflicts into mind, and how for example, I wrote a report about Ukraine, and there are disputed cities, disputed provinces in Ukraine where some people believe that it's Russia, some people believe that it's Ukraine, and in that case, you leave it out of the content because there isn't a general global consensus on what is correct. So I would say that you do always want to take your audience into mind, and really, I don't think that you should be creating content that doesn't have a goal. And usually content, you're either trying to generate awareness of your business or you're trying to close a deal. There's some sort of conversion in mind at the end of the process. So it's really, what's the action that you want your audience to take after reading your content? Is it subscribing? Is it, calling you for a demo of your product? Is it booking a meeting to talk about your services? So it's really, understanding who's reading and why.
So to be clear, then you are taking that into consideration, because you're like me, Elizabeth. It sounds like where you have an objective to the story other than to just share information. It's to drive an action.
I think that, you know, from Ookla's standpoint, we're providing unbiased reporting on the performance of networks worldwide. So knowing that our audience consists of those network operators who are, you know, very interested in our data, very interested in proving that their performance is better than their competitors, that they're the best in their country, or et cetera. But also, you know, we have a large consumer audience who are interested in the state of networks. And then a big part of our audience are journalists who want to report on their networks. And then other audience is policymakers. So they need to understand, you know, what's going on in their countries. And, you know, we do write to appeal to that sort of broad cross-section. So we have to make sure that the content is approachable. But I think, you know, making sure that you maintain like scientific objectivity, especially in this case, is important. So it's not writing to the lowest common denominator. You want to write to the broadest cross-section of your industry that's actually meaningful. Like, I'm sure that we could write a lot more consumer-focused content about the state of networks, but that wouldn't really impact our bottom line. So
yeah. So again, the audience is on your website or on social media when you're primarily
both. We have a subscribership, and then, you know, I'm on the enterprise side of the company. So the audience that I'm trying to build is, you know, named contacts. So people who have, you know, I know what country they're in. I know what their job title is. I know that they're the right person at the right company to make a purchasing decision for our enterprise solutions. So, you know, most of the content that I'm working on, and I do write blog posts every so often for Ookla, but most of the content that I'm working on is more evergreen. So things like white papers, webinars, market reports, things like that.
There's a couple questions from the group here, and it's one of the topics I'd like to get into. We've got about 10 minutes left. So I want to get with Jennifer, because you've got a different perspective on this, because your last role was promoting products. So go back to the questions of Ira, considering your audience, considering your personal, how does it work with something like that?
And can we say this too, Jennifer? Can we talk about the difference between writing something for your website, in that case, right, the company's site, versus maybe something you put on LinkedIn or Facebook?
Okay, so I came in as a social person, so I didn't handle the digital marketing. My blog was a separate website from the company site, because they do pay-per-click advertising to drive, and they don't want to distract from, if they get you to the website, they want you to buy casters. So any blog, anything will distract from that. As far as politics goes, I discussed it with my boss, and I chose not to take a stand. I did not react, other than to the COVID stuff, which is the 6-foot distancing, the masks and stuff, and showing that in pictures. I did not get into politics because it wasn't my business and it wasn't my brand, and I didn't want to represent the company in a way that they didn't want to be represented. But if you're looking as a sole proprietor or small businesses, I know many people on my Facebook feed who've taken stands, and that's fine as long as you're going to stand behind them. My biggest problem with the recent political stuff has been, if you're going to say for example, you're committed to diversity and change, and then let me see that change a year from now in your company culture and in your board management and in your executive management. If it's pandering, don't do it. But if you're going to actually back up your actions with your words with actions a year from now, and I can see that change that you said a year ago has actually been implemented, then that speaks to your integrity as a business, your integrity as an entrepreneur, and all of that. So it's fine to take a stand, because you do need to repel. If you speak to everybody, you speak to nobody. So you do want to, attract the people that you want to work with if you're a service-based person, or repel the people that you don't. And politics is right now the biggest, easiest way to do that, as long as you stand behind and you're willing to stick to those values and not backtrack all the time on what you say. So that's my political thing. Now, I know that there was a question, what methods do you use to measure effectiveness of content, etc.? And if you can make your answer relevant to a sole proprietor, that would be great. So for me, my big focus was, it varied by platform. So if we're talking social media, engagement is a big one, because engagement to me, in my view, equals, especially for sole provider, if somebody's engaging with your content and that same person is engaging with your content consistently, that's a warm lead. Like if you have to look at it, is this person liking my content every day? Is this person sharing my content occasionally? Is this person commenting all the time? Is this person in my group? Is this person doing this? In those respects, I would consider that person a warm lead. And so I look a lot to engagement.
So Adam and Elizabeth, now listening to Jennifer, it's also similar at an enterprise level, I would think, but it may be because you're going out by email or newsletter or something like that. You can see the engagement there too. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we get direct feedback like every day on which stories are hitting, and which aren't. So, if I'm covering, I've covered the newspaper industry's consolidation pretty closely, like at the corporate level for the past few months, like that. I realize that doesn't always get the best engagement after, a couple of months, probably because people are burnt out, especially because people get burned out with certain narratives and storylines. And that certainly educates, not saying you're going to totally ignore the story going forward, just because, there's not a ton of eyeballs there, but it can definitely guide your coverage, I guess, as a journalist a little bit, because you do want to connect with readers. You do want, to drive people to your website, and whether you're trying to drive subscriptions or just get eyeballs. But
you also want to be intellectually honest. And I think that's where Jennifer was going too. Let me see your actions a year from now, kind of, at least there's some resemblance of what you stated you were for. You know what I mean? Sometimes it takes a long time to turn that ship around. And if you really do, for example, with the COVID-19, getting your consumers so I'm in the print business. I walk into a business and there's no safety signage anywhere. It's all right, we need to get this stuff in place. Well, some of developing that plan might take 3 months or 6 months, so you might not see all the pretty signage and all the most effective signage the first day. You might see paper, handwritten notes taped up, but then a month later you start to see some more official stuff, and then 3 months later you see more. And there's an analogy maybe you guys can follow, but the same thing maybe with a business. So they write a blog and say, hey, we're going to make this change, and then 6 months later you see that they've enacted some new policies because it had to go through the legalese process, right? And then a year later, you see maybe they've acquired somebody or they've shut a division down or something because they're following their intellectual, their thought process, their beliefs, and you see it.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, in your situation, it seems like with Ookla being a more data-driven, information-based thing, are you guys? Is most of your stuff in a newsletter format, and you're measuring, how many times people hit certain white papers, or what is really in a general sense?
There are a few different sort of metrics that we look at to determine, was a piece of content successful. And part of it is just, normal stats that you can grab from Google Analytics. Were people reading the blog? How much time did they spend on the page, et cetera? But then when you get into creating other types of content beyond just an email newsletter or blog, you can actually measure, how many people signed up for this? Are they qualified leads, or are they, just kind of like looky-loos or spammers or things like that? Yeah. So, it's kind of the nice part of being in B2B marketing is you can actually see the impact of the campaigns that you create. This resulted in 100 qualified leads, which led to 10 meetings, which led to 2 deals, and totally justified the cost of creating the content and promoting it. That kind of thing. So the more you can understand the the KPIs that you're looking for and create content where you can actually measure what's happening. That's why I really like running ads through LinkedIn for business related content. You can see how many impressions you got, but you can also do conversion tracking to see like, oh, well, this person didn't just look at my landing page, they actually filled out the form. It gets a little bit more granular, so you can understand the impact of the content that you're creating. But again, that's more middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. I think, Jennifer mentioned looking at engagement on social. That's a really good metric. If you're trying to build one-on-one relationships, if you're not, trying to get into an enterprise organization, it's really about building relationships and making sure that you have an authentic connection with your prospective customers.
Yeah, cool. Well, it is very cool. The interesting in how you said that it's all about engagement, but it is right in B2B. I mean, you honestly probably know who you're reaching out to at that point.
Yeah, you know their name, you know their title. You're like specifically targeting that. That's why I love LinkedIn ads, because I can say, it's ABM, account-based marketing. I can say I want to reach these specific network engineering titles at these specific companies in this country, and I can create, in their native language, pictures for the social media posts that actually have their company names in them. Like, you can get super, super targeted. And that I found to be the most effective strategy as far as conversion goes is, often we'll report on the companies that we want as customers, or the countries where we want the regulatory bodies to be our customers, like by our data platforms. So we get super targeted and writing content about the people that we want to buy.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, Jeff Graham asked a couple questions, and the first one was a while back and we missed it. It was about, do you really think that your content should be more general or more hyper focused? And I think based on what you said, it could be where you're at in the funnel as well. But overall, what do you think it should be?
Oh, I can speak to that a little bit. So if I'm looking at Caster, when I'm looking at Casters as a product, we had the B2B market, which was the higher margin stuff for replacement casters for hospital beds and things like that. We also had a consumer market. And so I had to actually, like the makers, the fabricators, the woodworkers, the people who are building furniture want to put wheels on the bottom. I had to find a way to create content that spoke to both audiences, because while the home audience was more lower margin, you get a low margin order, but you get more of them. It kind of helps to fill the gap a little bit. And we actually did really, really well on Instagram, kind of targeting that woodworking maker, kind of multiple orders from the same person for everything they were building. And so it can be difficult to speak, if you're too general, you're not really affecting anybody. But when you have two very specific different markets, you have to try and speak to each one of them. And that can be a challenge. Speaking from a services standpoint, ideal client avatar, you speak to that person. You speak to the person that you want to sell to.
So you're gonna hyper focus in. Yeah. So Jeff's there with us. Oh, maybe he's just listening. There he is. So did you know they were gonna put you on stage?
No, but I am now. I wasn't doing anything bad or anything.
Yeah. So a little feedback on that, Jeff. What are your follow-up questions to it for the group?
Yeah, I guess more of my, kind of what I'm going at is building a following from the beginning, when a lot of these folks might have followings, but just depending on new ventures, more generalized content or more focused content or hyper-focused content is kind of my question around, where to spend your time out of the gate, let's just say.
What can you tell me more about what you do?
I do two things. I have a online university around e-commerce so we sell essentially education e-commerce certificates. And then I also have a consulting firm in Denver, and then I work with Damon and these guys and help, kind of create this Exit Your Way. So a couple different things, but it isn't necessarily, I'm not necessarily speaking on myself, but for clients that I work with and things like that.
I mean, you always want to speak to your ideal client, no matter what it is. Like, so I built my consulting business by creating content around the people that I wanted to work with, the people that I wanted to buy from me, and then interacting and engaging with them. So the more that you can niche down, the more you'll be able to create that relationship with those people to get them to buy. So like e-commerce, you don't want to be talking to somebody who's not selling anything in e-commerce, just as an example. You want to be talking to those people who maybe don't understand e-commerce but want to get into e-commerce. And so that's a very specific audience. So if you just talk about generally about e-commerce, you're not really going to generate sales that way. I mean, that's the best I can do off the top of my head, and I'm happy to chat with you separately.
What about, so a lot of folks on here like Ira and these other guys, have huge followings on LinkedIn, and everyone now it's like almost like LinkedIn's turned into a lion thing. It was like 6-7 years ago, LinkedIn Open Networker thing. Everyone's connecting with everyone. So how do you deal with content with how noisy it is? Being the fact that it's noisy out there. There's too much content rammed down your throat constantly. So how do you establish a foothold when you're dealing with those challenges? Especially a lot of these new, these business owners or professionals in this group, in the roundtable this week. What do you do about that? Those are things I'm finding are challenging.
It's really hilarious to me that you guys all say LinkedIn is noisy, because LinkedIn is Facebook like 5 years ago. So if you've survived the Facebook jungle, LinkedIn is like, the concepts are the same, but video. I mean, if you want an honest answer, video is the single thing that gets play on every single platform. If you want to really stand out, video with captions. That's the best way to do it organically.
Okay.
I would add, one thing to keep in mind, like how do you stand out? And then I think that really, it depends on the quality of your content. And I think that putting out content just for content's sake is something that a lot of people are doing. They're trying to like hit certain keywords. They're trying to, generate X amount of like broad impressions, but the content that actually converts is high quality. And what does high quality mean? Often it's providing something that's actually valuable to your target audience of customers without making them sign up, without making them buy anything. It's sort of that, what can you leave on the table for them that will make them think like, oh, this person really knows what they're talking about. This person has knowledge or skills that I want to learn from. And, like using e-commerce as an example, like if you're trying to teach people how to run their own web stores, it's like providing them with that like practical how-to content is probably what a lot of people are searching for on the internet. It's probably what a lot of people would subscribe to. So it's really understanding and investing in making your content high quality as possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it is, because it is, as Jeff said, and even though it doesn't sound it's not nearly as noisy as Facebook, Jennifer. LinkedIn is, you look over the last year, it's a different place, especially with COVID and everybody being in front of a computer. But and standing out, though, I think back to Elizabeth's point is, and yours, and Adam, you too, you guys have to focus in on your avatar. Focus in on your avatar. Write stuff that is a concern to them or would be beneficial to them. And you hear this, there's a ton of people on here, Mike O'Connor and Ira and all the people that we've got on here, Kurt Anderson, these people that understand by giving away good, solid content helps you build that following. that really allows people to connect with you because they understand, as you said, Elizabeth, you know what you're doing. And in so, they get to know you a bit better too, through your writing, through your videos and stuff like that. And yeah, it's cool. And I know it's tempting for a lot of people, especially starting up, is that you want to write broad-based content to get everybody interested. Well, that, as you said, Jennifer, I think Elizabeth did too, is if you do that, you lose nobody. You get nobody. And that's good. And you know, if we all had the luxury of being as hyper focused as Adam on the people that he gets to talk to, it's a different challenge. Is all it is to find, because you got to look at it and go, I've got to imagine, Adam, from your standpoint, there are a lot of things happening and a lot of news to cover, but finding news that stands out every day or every week or how often you have to do it, it is probably a challenge.
Yeah, it certainly is. And one thing that I always keep in mind is just like, how does the private equity world, trying to find basically things that my mom would read is the way I always think of it in my head. Like, how is this applying to like our everyday life, like their investments, what's happening, you know, whether it's, you know, they're investing in healthcare or, you know, there's certainly some political ramifications of a lot of the stuff they've been doing lately. So yeah, just trying to find that like broader reach where you mentioned it will reach an audience, you know, that maybe will go a little bit beyond just the regular private equity guys. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, one thing I noticed in the chat, if you haven't looked at the chat, Elizabeth brought this up when we were prepping. The Hemingway app helps you edit your content, shows you where you're not writing, you're not following good writing practices. That's awesome. Yeah. Awesome resource that she's given us there. So any parting thoughts, Andrew? We got anybody else you need to bring up, or are we getting near the end, and what do we need to do? You're on mute, so you're still on mute.
Okay. Hit that button like 4 times.
Yeah.
Get some more coffee. No, I think we're doing great here. Adam, just that last question, man. If sports comes calling, man, are you going back, or are you going to stay in the exciting world of M&A?
Private equity. Well, I would say never, but I do get to write about sports now, kind of indirectly, because all of these big firms are trying to help bail out, you know, leagues, whether it's European soccer leagues or there's investors out there trying to raise funds where you can buy passive minority stakes in different NBA and MLB teams. So, you know, if it's sports business where I'm writing about right now, I'm pretty happy where I'm at. So
nice.
Yeah, that is. Well, it's an interesting development too, you know, because if you're not following private equity, they've got a gazillion dollars, literally almost a gazillion dollars in cash sitting around. So that they look at it as a buying.
And I think it's either a third or like a little more than a third of the current NBA owners were at one point private equity executives. So I really didn't realize the overlap when I got into this, but as I've, you know, learned more, I've found myself writing about, you know, kind of what I used to write about to some degree. So
yeah,
crazy.
Very cool.
Good stuff. Well, sports is a little slow right now, so as we know.
It is. Looking forward to tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, just to kind of wrap things up here, you know, the takeaways, it's great. I think to see basic principles and thank you guys for coming on and sharing some of your tricks of the trade. It's incredible, but, you know, at the end of the day, I think, you know, it's just hard work, getting good content out there. You know, you can see by talking through how they do this and getting it out there. There's no shortcuts, and you just have to be you have to have people who are interested in things and connecting with folks and, you know, establishing that kind of connection and trust. I think it's fascinating. And, you know, I think it's a higher level of connection and sales, you know, which benefits your company and your own personal life. So thank you guys for coming in and sharing your stuff. And I think we're running up at the top of the hour again. Again, everybody, This is the exit your way moment, shameless plug. We're going back to the table, so these guys will be here too. If you guys want to come in and chat with them after, we'll be around as long as people want to hang out. Please do. And Damon, next week we have
Brad Smith, and we're going to get a couple other people with them. We're going to talk a little bit about the science behind leadership, and from a psychological perspective. I'll just say that. It's going to be an interesting discussion around that and the traits in leadership that really make people successful in those roles or not.
So those of you who don't know Brad, Stellar Insights. He is a very successful business coach, and he works with leaders in their heads. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to thank the panel again. You guys were great. I learned a couple things in here. Back to when we were talking about different content, different points in the funnel, but B, the one thing that really stuck with me throughout is focus on your client avatar and speak to them. If you do one thing, I think that was the nugget that I got from you guys, is just focus on that avatar and get as specific as you can. So thanks a lot. We're going back to the tables. Awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.